The first important point for nurturing a truth-seeking individual is that this person must understand that truth is not apparent. The theory of the non-apparency of truth explains that truth is not something obvious, clear, or straightforward. Truth is something that, through the collective efforts of all humanity across all of history, civilizations, cultures, traditions, societies, and historical periods, people gradually inch closer to. Truth has an ineffable quality of non-apparency. We are constantly approaching it incrementally, through questioning and confronting serious issues. All individuals who genuinely engage with the world essentially question its fundamental matters. Through these inquiries, bit by bit, epsilon by epsilon, atom by atom, we draw closer to truth. In epistemology, this concept is referred to as the theory of the non-apparency of truth. The theory of the non-apparency of truth stands in stark opposition to ideological thinking. Ideological thinking means believing that truth is apparent, and that the apparent truth is the very truth we possess. Therefore, the first thing we must teach our students for the sake of peace is to teach them that truth is something at a galactic distance from humanity, a distance so vast that it applies not only to all of humanity collectively, but even more so to a single human individual, and even more so to you as that individual. We must all join hands and, throughout human history, gradually move closer to the truth. The notion that every subject has a single approach, every issue has a single solution, and every problem has a single way to be resolved directly contradicts the non-apparency of truth. In reality, ideological thinkers believe that any subject can only be addressed in one way, any issue can only be solved in one manner, and any problem can only be resolved by a single method. If I can instill in my child, in my student, that the greatest lie ever told throughout history is this, that every subject can only be approached in one specific way, every issue can only be solved in one specific way, and every problem can only be resolved in one specific way. The truth is, any subject can be approached from infinite perspectives, any issue can be solved by infinite methods, and any problem can be addressed by infinite solutions. The diversity and multitude of these paths inspire hope in humanity, enabling subjects to be approached correctly, issues to be resolved correctly, and problems to be addressed correctly. Ideological thinking is the exact opposite of this perspective. It asserts that each subject has a single approach, and that approach is the one they possess. Each issue has a single solution, and that solution is the one they know, and each problem has a single resolution, and that resolution is the one they are aware of. Consequently, they declare the matter closed. Cases are closed on subjects, issues, and problems. They claim the matter is resolved, the issue is settled, and the problem is addressed. In fact, ideological thinkers go even further. They never open the case in the first place to avoid exposing the issue. From the outset, the case remains closed. They assume, without ever opening the file, that they already know what must be done for any subject, any issue, or any problem. This occurs in a world where, today, we understand that even the most certain sciences, such as mathematics and logic, are based on a series of axioms. If we were to change these axioms, the outcomes would also change. When this is the situation for logic and mathematics, it becomes even more evident for other areas. If the non-apparency of truth is believed by our audience, then they will gradually be drawn into the three areas I am about to mention. I will present these three areas briefly in a list form. The first point is that if truth is non-apparent, then we must be open-minded. We must open our minds to every perspective. To have an open mind does not mean accepting every perspective. It means listening to every perspective, as every perspective deserves to be heard. After listening to a perspective and understanding it, then we must deliberate on whether to accept it or not. Therefore, being open-minded does not mean accepting everything we hear. Rather, it means considering every perspective worthy of being heard, allowing it to reach the threshold of our awareness. Once it reaches our awareness, we must understand it. Only after understanding it can we evaluate whether or not it is acceptable. Because if we assume that truth is non-apparent, then a fragment of truth might lie with you, and another fragment might lie with someone else. I must keep an open mind toward both you and others. I must see how you have perceived the truth and what stance you have taken regarding it. This openness of mind is essential. If someone possesses an open mind, it eliminates three specific characteristics. First, someone with an open mind does not exhibit rigidity or dogmatism. They may hold beliefs, but they are not rigidly attached to those beliefs. Any person can have opinions about any subject, issue, or problem. Having beliefs is not inherently a flaw or fault. The problem arises when one adds rigidity and inflexibility to those beliefs. For example, if I believe A is B, holding that belief is fine. However, if I assert that A is B and insist that it is impossible for A not to be B, such dogmatism transforms me from a thoughtful individual into a rigidly dogmatic believer. Someone who understands the non-apparency of truth would say, I believe A is B, but I remain open to the possibility that evidence may emerge tomorrow proving A is not B. Claiming it is impossible for A not to be B makes one dogmatic, rigid, and closed to new insights. The second characteristic that open-mindedness eliminates is prejudice or bias. What does prejudice mean? It means, for instance, that one day I perceived you as a servant of your country and, based on that perception, declared friendship, loyalty, and collaboration with you. This belief was rooted in the idea that you were committed to serving your country. Now, after some time, I realized that either I was wrong from the beginning, and you were not serving your country but betraying it, or B, you were indeed loyal at the start, but over time your actions shifted toward betrayal. In either case, if I say, since I initially declared my loyalty, I will maintain that loyalty until the end regardless of what happens, this is prejudice. Prejudice means that my loyalty to you is not contingent upon your character or actions. No matter how much your personality fluctuates, no matter how your stance changes, I remain bound by my initial commitment. Those who are not prejudiced adjust their level of attachment, commitment, and loyalty based on the evolving character and actions of others. The more virtuous and elevated a person becomes, the greater their loyalty and dedication to that person. Conversely, if that individual descends into moral corruption or betrayal, they decrease their attachment and commitment accordingly. In other words, they make their loyalty dependent on a variable, the degree of moral excellence or degradation of the other person. Prejudice, however, dictates that once I make a commitment, I must stick to it regardless of the person's moral trajectory. This is the essence of prejudice. However, open-mindedness eliminates a third issue, wishful thinking. The second thing that dialogue eliminates is resistance to reasoning. This is because, in a conversation, no one accepts your statements without reasons, and you, in turn, do not accept anyone else's statements without reasons. Thus, dialogue serves as an antidote to avoiding reason. When we overcome this aversion to reasoning, we embrace the idea that we accept someone's words only when we find their reasoning compelling. If the reasoning isn't strong, it doesn't matter who the speaker is. We won't accept what they say. We must never attach the speaker's identity to their statement as a substitute for evidence. Instead, the statement must be tied to its justification. Simply saying, "Accept this because so and so said it," is insufficient. If we are to accept a statement, it must be accompanied by solid reasoning, regardless of who made it. When I believe in the hidden nature of truth, I naturally gravitate toward dialogue because I acknowledge that you may hold part of the truth that I need to learn, and you may similarly believe that I hold part of the truth that you need to know. This mutual recognition fosters the spirit of dialogue. The third characteristic of recognizing the unknowability of truth is that when truth is unknowable, I must turn to self-reflection and achieve intellectual independence. If you notice, in the discussion of open-mindedness and dialogue, I have learned things from others. Now, I need to decide between the things I've learned, and these things don't necessarily align with one another. For instance, I learned from one person that A is B, but someone else tells me A is not B, and a third person suggests that some A's are B. Now, I must choose among these three views. Not everyone agrees on a particular topic, and not everyone shares the same opinion on an issue or a problem. Therefore, I am left with conflicting ideas, whether they are contradictory, opposed, different, or just not aligned. This is where self-reflection comes in. After the process of dialogue and open-mindedness, I must evaluate the ideas I've gathered and figure out which one I accept. Self-reflection means that although I have learned from others, I must now weigh those ideas within myself and choose what makes the most sense to me. I need an internal measure to decide which ideas to accept and which to reject. If I engage in this process of self-reflection, I will overcome several intellectual pitfalls that are eliminated by this kind of thinking. If you are a self-reflective person, the first intellectual pitfall that is eliminated is suggestibility. Suggestibility means accepting a statement simply because many people, such as your parents, friends, colleagues, or neighbors, repeatedly tell you the same thing. When a statement is heard frequently from many sources, I gradually become more inclined to believe it. This is called suggestibility. Self-reflection eliminates suggestibility because the person is not swayed by the sheer number of people making the same statement. Instead, they critically evaluate the truth of the statement. The second intellectual pitfall that self-reflection eliminates is repetition-based suggestion. Repetition-based suggestion means continually repeating a claim without providing any solid reasoning behind it. For example, if someone says, "This person is a saint," and I ask for their reasoning, and they simply repeat, "He is a saint," this is just repeating the claim without any justification. In advertising, this is often seen when a product is marketed by repeating the same message over and over, like saying, "This car is the best car," multiple times without providing any evidence. Self-reflection stops this kind of suggestion because when someone says the same claim over and over, it doesn't change the claim itself. The repeated claim must be supported by reasoning, and self-reflection forces the person to look for valid reasons before accepting any claim. The third intellectual pitfall that is eliminated by self-reflection is imitation. Imitation means following someone's way of life, beliefs, emotions, desires, or ideals without any rational justification, simply because I like or love that person. For example, I may adopt their way of living or their values just because I like them, without considering whether those values are right for me or if they align with my own reasoning. Love and admiration, which are emotional, should not automatically lead to imitation. Just because I care about someone doesn't mean I should follow everything they do. The fourth intellectual pitfall that is weakened by self-reflection is blind obedience. Blind obedience means accepting someone's words or instructions without questioning them. For instance, if someone is the founder of a religion, sect, or ideology, it doesn't mean I should unquestioningly accept everything they say. Self-reflection teaches that I should always critically evaluate the ideas and arguments presented to me, even if they come from a revered leader or authority figure. Blind obedience gives no room for critical thought or resistance, but self-reflection encourages questioning and independence of thought, thus reducing blind obedience. There are no shortage of individuals, groups, and communities that have been consumed by wishful thinking. Wishful thinking is when emotions are transformed into beliefs. For example, because I wish for my religion to be the most perfect religion, I then become convinced that it is the most perfect religion. Because I wish for my child to be the most diligent student at university, I then become convinced that my child is the most diligent student, transforming feelings and emotional desires into beliefs. This is the essence of wishful thinking. History is full of those who have been ruined by it. It is akin to my loving my mother more than any other mother on earth, a perfectly natural and acceptable sentiment. There is no issue with this love. But if, because of this profound affection for my mother, I decide she must also be the most beautiful woman in the world, that's where the problem begins. Loving my mother and wishing her to be the most honorable, pure, courageous, and learned woman in the world is natural. However, if I conclude that because I wish for her to be all these things, she is all these things, that is wishful thinking. If I am open-minded, I will see other mothers and recognize that my mother, while the most beloved to me, is not necessarily the most beautiful, the most knowledgeable, or the most courageous. Open-mindedness allows me to acknowledge the reality of other people while cherishing my personal connection. If we believe in the non-apparency of truth, the first effect is that we become open-minded. This open-mindedness, in turn, protects us from these three intellectual pitfalls: rigidity, prejudice, and wishful thinking. The second outcome is that if I truly believe in the non-apparency of truth, I will engage in dialogue with you. Why? Because I believe I know a fragment of the truth that I can share with you. However, I also acknowledge that you likely know a fragment of the truth that you can share with me. This belief drives me to engage in dialogue with you. Dialogue, in this sense, is an acknowledgement that there is something within you that I need to know, and something within me that you need to know. Thus, I initiate a conversation with you, recognizing the mutual exchange of insights as a pathway toward approaching truth. When I engage in dialogue, three additional intellectual pitfalls are also resolved. Assumptive judgment. Assumptive judgment is making judgments about you before ever meeting you. It means forming an opinion about a nation before meeting even one of its members. It involves judging a school of thought, a belief system, a religion, a sect, an ideology, or even atheism without ever interacting with anyone who adheres to it. Assumptive judgment is judgment prior to encounter, before meeting and understanding. If I am someone who values dialogue, my assumptive judgment dissipate. Why? Because, for instance, I might harbor a negative assumptive judgment toward a particular religion, nation, or ideology. But when I engage in conversation with someone connected to that religion, sect, or nation, those assumptive judgments gradually fade. Dialogue works to erode assumptive judgment. The antidote to assumptive judgment is to meet with people directly, rather than relying on inherited or unexamined beliefs. For example, I may have grown up with parents, cultural traditions, or communities that told me certain groups are impure, corrupt, or untrustworthy. But when I actually engage in dialogue with someone from that group, I realize those claims were rooted in a lack of encounter and understanding. Assumptive judgment stems from judging without first engaging with what is being judged. Dialogue eliminates this by fostering direct experience and mutual understanding. Another thing that weakens with self-reflection is conformity to public opinion. If I am a self-reflective person, I will not follow public opinion just because it is the majority view. For example, when the majority believes that A and B are true, but after considering it myself, I cannot accept that it is true, I will not simply go along with it because everyone else believes it. While others have the right to believe what they do, I will not follow them just because they are in the majority. I will trust my own reasoning and critical thinking. These are three things that all stem from the idea that the truth is not obvious or clear. When the truth is not obvious, I approach things with an open mind, willing to engage in dialogue and practice self-reflection. If you pay attention, this gradually leads to humility. These three qualities push us toward intellectual humility, meaning I recognize that I am just one thinker among many, one person among countless others, and my beliefs are only one among infinite possibilities. My feelings and emotions are just one set of emotions among many others. This is the essence of intellectual humility. When I accept that the truth is not obvious, I arrive at three essential conclusions, and from these conclusions I reach one result: humility. This humility isn't about social etiquette or following customs. It's not about adhering to cultural norms. True humility is intellectual humility. It means not considering myself as the center of everything. I don't say, my belief system is superior to others, or my nation is better than others because it's mine. Intellectual humility means I do not regard myself or my group as the ultimate or best, and I acknowledge that there are countless other ideas, people, and groups. Initially, this humility is individual, meaning I do not consider myself superior to others. Then it becomes group humility, where I don't consider my nation, ethnicity, religion, or any other group I belong to as superior. Finally, there is species humility, where I understand that humans are not inherently superior to other species. This means I do not believe that humans are above other animals or creatures. If we truly achieve this species humility, we understand that our pleasure should not come at the expense of others' pain and suffering. We can no longer justify causing harm to other living beings for our own benefit, even if humans may feel superior. This arrogance, based on our species alone, must vanish. Now imagine a person who has been raised in such a way that their teachers always told them that A and B are the only truth. They were never exposed to any other perspectives, and were taught to repeat that A and B are the answer, without questioning. This person would not grow up to be peaceful. True peace comes from humility, and humility arises from the realization that we need others. The recognition of this need stems from understanding that we do not possess the whole truth within ourselves. As Shams Tabrizi says, the truth is like a broken mirror. Each person holds only a piece of it, and the totality of the truth exists only when these fragments come together. The mirror represents the eternal beloved, or the ultimate truth, which has fallen and shattered. Each person holds just a fragment of this shattered mirror, and can only see a part of the truth through it. It is not wrong to look at the piece of the mirror you hold, but it is wrong to believe that the entire truth is contained within that piece. The complete truth becomes apparent only when all the pieces of the mirror are brought together. Only through the collective gathering of these fragments can the whole truth be revealed.